So let us go back to what Gandhi is talking about in terms of modern civilization and its problems. So let's say its pathological foundations. So when he says that modern civilization is about bodily welfare, it's about possession, it's about having more and more things around, it's about a peculiar conception of upscaling, right? And so on, or a certain kind of control. So basically what he's pointing out is that modern civilization creates, or shall we say, promotes a culture of convenience, right? And this convenience is something that leads to, for the lack of a better phrase, hyper-consumerism, something that we are all aware of, and for all we know, maybe we are all facilitating one way or another. So Gandhi points out, of course, not directly, but I think implicit in his reflections is the idea that the kind of modern civilization, the kind of, shall we say, the essence of modern civilization lies in promoting a culture of convenience, and this culture of convenience paves the way for hyper-consumerism. And then I would like to point out, and this is my first argument, that consumerism is inherently, essentially, fundamentally, foundationally anti-dialogue, right? So if you are a brazen consumerist, if you are an unapologetic consumerist, then, like it or not, you are anti-dialogue. Consumerism is fundamentally against any dialogic tendency, right? Because consumerism is about a certain, it's about a misplaced understanding of aspiration, but it is also about controlling. It's also about a certain kind of conquest. It's also about demonstrating a certain being, right, in the public and whatnot. So consumerism is fundamentally and foundationally anti-dialogue. So that is point number one. The other point is that Gandhi keeps going back to the idea of duty. So he points out, when he is asked this question, what is true civilization? And he says, civilization is that mode of conduct which points out to man the path of duty. So basically what he has in mind is what Krishna tells Arjun in the middle of Kurukshetra, the idea of dharma, right? And it's a fairly complicated conversation. It's a very profound, but also very layered and complex conversation, the exchange that goes on between Arjuna and Krishna, or let's say Arjun's conscience. So Gandhi is invoking the idea of duty. Now, this is where the second argument comes, and it's not, I don't want to make it as forcefully as I wanted to make the consumerism argument, but it is an argument I'd like to make nonetheless, that duty is, as compared to rights, duty is more facilitating vis-a-vis dialogue. So what happened, and I'm not at all pointing out that rights are not important. Of course, rights are important. And in any liberal democratic setup, as some of us would already know, that rights always remain more important, more paramount than duties. But I want to kind of invoke a very different understanding of duty here. And this is something that I am sort of doing by means of borrowing from the realm of religion. And, you know, if you want to push it, spirituality. So this sense of duty is something. So this inner call, or let's say a certain voice from within the deep recesses of one's being, vis-a-vis what is right and what is wrong, and a sense of obligation that is informed by what is right and what is wrong, is going to lead to a certain, shall we say, a certain willingness vis-a-vis dialogue. The question of rights, of course, remains very important, but what happens in hyper-consumerist age, and that's the age we are all a part of, what happens in this particular age is that consumerism very often is kind of pitched via a somewhat ill-informed understanding of rights. So consumers basically, keep going back to the idea of rights. So, which is where I think there is a certain kind of degeneration of the idea of rights that happens in a typical neoliberal, global capitalist, whatever setup that we are a part of. So consumerism is invariably facilitated by a rather misplaced, ill-informed shallow and tentative understanding of rights and claims, whereas duty is something that urges us to understand dialogue, or let's say it urges us to develop a certain willingness vis-a-vis dialogue. And Gandhi was always, some of you might have read more by Gandhi, on Gandhi. Gandhi was always someone who was more inclined towards duties and not rights. It is not to say that he dismissed rights, but he always believed that if you really want to kind of bring about a civilization that is accommodative, that is compassionate, and that can offer a range of lessons for the rest of the world, then we must have more willingness vis-a-vis duties and less assertion, insistence vis-a-vis rights. So Gandhi, in that sense, had a very different understanding, and his sense of prioritization, or his scaling of preferences was very different as compared to the typical liberal, democratic, constitutional frameworks through which we operate. So that is second point. Then he also points out that within the context of the civilization, what happens is that in this culture of convenience that I spoke about a while ago, and through that, this consumerism that comes to the fore, the most pathological and the most inhuman sort, what happens is that the proper use of hands and feet is a matter of history. So, and we know this very well. I think who would know this better than ourselves, who have been to a certain extent now trained, been socialized in getting things done without moving, right? So this idea that there is no need to move, this idea that there's no need to do anything, and everything will just happen. All you need to do is, of course, unfortunately, all you need to do is just press a few buttons and things will be sorted. Now, what happens is that hands and feet are totally out of scene. So we are of course, we are creatures who so far have been walking and we use our hands. But the fact of the matter is that there's something that the civilization has done, as a result of which the dialogue between different body parts is also going to be a matter of history very soon. Or at least the dialogue between different body parts, the coordination is not really as strong and assuring as it was at one point of time, thanks to the button culture, thanks to this hyper-consumerism.